We're back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host. We're here live every morning from 8 to 10 a.m. Central Time. If you'd like to watch our program live, you can capture it by going to our website. You can jump to americasvoicenow.org and simply click the play button where we actually provide a streaming video link to our show every morning, 8 to 10 a.m. We're going to talk about the Homeland Security posted a bid out on the Federal Business Opportunities website for the Federal Protective Service. Now, everything, as you know, after 9/11, was wrapped up underneath the Department of Homeland Security. They became the de facto federal arm for everything domestic. And Department of Homeland Security has underneath its all-encompassing octopus arms all of these different units and divisions, including all of the local law enforcement, all of our national law enforcement, including border security and all the rest. They put out this bid for about $80 million to hire armed guards to protect IRS and other government buildings in upstate New York during, quote, public demonstrations and civil disturbances. Now, the question, of course, is if this doesn't prompt your question about why a federal agency is preparing for food stamp riots and tax demonstrations and anti-this and anti-that, anti-war demonstrations, what is it about you that is refusing to see the writing on the wall? I mean, you know, I find it difficult that most Americans are completely oblivious to the truth of what's happening to us. This solicitation is looking for a contractor to provide armed security, and the goal, of course, is to provide a level of protection for the IRS during the upcoming tax season in the spring. Now, they will be, according to the quote or the bid, they'll be required to be armed, and some posts may require screening of visitors using X-ray and magnetometers. The guards will be used during, quote, public demonstrations as well as civil disturbances or other unanticipated events on an as-needed basis. They're essentially ordering or purchasing or bidding for 380,000 hours of basic services, 20,000 hours of temporary additional services, and 3,500 hours of emergency services per year. Currently, there are about 205 guards protecting approximately 95 posts in over 55 buildings. The estimated value of the contract is between $75 and $80 million. That's a quote from their solicitation. So let's take a look at that for a moment. Why is it that the Department of Homeland Security feels it's necessary to burn $80 million at a time when cutbacks are so severe that we're not allowing kids to be taken to the White House for tours anymore? I mean, why is it that we need armed guards to protect public buildings? What exactly is the DHS anticipating? They've been buying literally billions of bullets, 2.6 billion rounds at last count, which they've never actually accounted for. Even though they've been called to the carpet on it, they've refused to answer. They are buying up medical supplies in vast, and I do mean vast, quantities. They are buying up emergency food supplies, including freeze-dried and long-term food storage. But in addition to that, ready-to-eat meals and pre-prepared meals and things like that. And they're buying them up in the tens of millions of meals. They have been purchasing body armor and helmets for these Federal Protection Services groups. They have been purchasing a lot of riot control gear. And they had a drill last year called Operation Shield, in which these agents were armed with weapons and posted around a Social Security office in Florida. The exercise was designed to, quote, detect the presence of unauthorized persons and potentially disruptive or dangerous activities. And if you wanted to get into the building during this drill, you were forced to show identification papers to the guards during the drill. Well, let's stop right there, because it's not limited to a drill. Not long ago, I had to go to a Social Security office because I had to get a copy of my Social Security card. When I walked in, there was a guard sitting there. Actually, there were two, but one of them was sitting and the other was standing at this. When you first walked in the door, you were in this like little entrance room, and it was about 6 by 10 feet, and you had to go left in order to get into the office. And as soon as you walked through that door, you were in this insider's booth, if you will, in which there was a gate there to keep you from walking through without being accosted, frankly. And there was two guards there. One was sitting, one was standing. They were armed. They insisted on seeing identification, and they needed to know what your business was before they would let you through the gate and into the main room where the waiting room was, where there was a bunch of chairs sitting there, and you go up and get your number, and then you sit and wait, and so forth. It's like going to a motor vehicle, right? The point is that right now, just to go into a Social Security office, you have to show identification. This isn't a drill. This is daily operation, folks. And you have to state your business to an armed guard in order just to get into the building to do whatever it is that you're there to do. What we're seeing in the United States is a massive increase in the control of the day in and day out general population. We're seeing the idea that the population is considered to be a danger to government offices, and individuals who work for the government itself. If that doesn't give you rise or give you pause to be concerned about how they view you and what their intentions are about you, I'm not sure that you're ever going to quite get the picture. If they are preparing for massive civil unrest, what do they know that you that you refuse to acknowledge within yourself? In the last year, the IRS has hired 16,500 new agents. Now, that is largely geared and designed for the upcoming influx of new victims, frankly, to the Obamacare projects. And when you talk about, 16,500 new agents hired, realize that the goal of this is that if you're non-compliant with Obamacare, they can seize the tax money, which is what it is. You can call it a premium, but it's a tax. That's what the Supreme Court, SCOTUS, called it, right? SCOTUS called it a tax. That's how they justified it. And so the federal government can, via your non-compliance, gain access and seize the money from your bank account. Well, do you think people are going to be upset when they find out that the IRS has gone into their bank account and seized funds to pay the fine because they refused to participate in Obamacare? You can bet your bottom dollar they will be. And how many of those people may be willing to go look for a Social Security office or an IRS office and take vengeance? That's their concern. They're also concerned about, as they continue to tax us into oblivion, people will protest, and they will gather in large numbers. And anyone knows that large numbers of people get that herd mentality. And sometimes because they feel as if they are invisible, because they are protected by the volume of or number in a crowd, that they get out of hand. I mean, proof of that is these roving gangs of wolves that are roaming our streets right now and attacking and assaulting businesses and individuals. Some of it's racial, some of it's just sheer nonsense, some of it's just sheer boredom. We're seeing it in our youth. It won't be long before we'll begin to see it in our general population. These Federal Protective Service people who are being hired, $80 million worth of them, by the way, that's a lot of money. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. $80 million is a lot of money. And so when we talk about the issue of, the food stamps that are, have been slated to be withheld, they're talking about the USDA directing states to withhold electronic transfer, the EBT benefits, in the month of November, and this was before the issue of the settlement, right, on the debt and reopening of government. And so they were concerned, and rightly so, I guess, that there would be people who would protest and or go nuts because they weren't getting their EBT card reloaded, shall we say. In addition to that, you have to recognize that I guess my point to you is this, and I don't want to belabor the point. What I'm trying to do here is express to you that we are reaching a point at which the boil has grown to its maturity. And when a boil reaches its level of maturity, it can only one of two things can happen. Either it bursts and it drains, or it leaches itself back into the system where it poisons you. It's an infection. And what we have in our government today is an infection. It's an infection of totalitarianism. It's an infection of elitist thinking. It's an infection of control. They believe that you are subject to their whims, ideas, and that their knowledge or their ideas have far more validity and credibility than yours. Their goal is to ultimately subjugate you. If you are willing to accept that, if you're willing to live under those auspices, then you'll get along fine. When crises happen, and they will, there will be crises, and there will be crises in the immediate future, folks. I'm not talking about, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. I'm talking about in the immediate future, as our debt continues to swell, as our government becomes more and more and more authoritarian, it's incumbent on them to control the people, because the people will rise up against the corporatocracies that we've talked about in the last segment with J.P. Morgan Chase. You see, the whole idea of fascism is simply this, and this is where we're headed. This is, by the way, for those who are concerned about this being socialism or communism, this is not. What we're descending into is straight, hardcore fascism. Let's understand what it is, and let's call it what it is and not PC around it. I don't want to tiptoe around the idea that we could be turning into some sort of a version of socialist Europe, and we're not. We are going straight past socialism into hardcore fascism. I'm telling you what the truth is. And if you are cognizant, if you're wise, if you will willingly look at the evidence in front of you, you can draw no other conclusion. Fascism is a combination of a government which is, for all intents and purposes, owned by industry and corporations. It's a corporatocracy. These corporations, these large industries, these large businesses own government, and they pay the puppets in the House of Representatives and in the Senate and even in the White House to do their bidding. At some point, the populace becomes unhappy about it because they're the sheep that are getting sheared, and they're feeling as if, listen, this is enough. We're stretched as far as we can go. Shortages happen, civil unrest happens, and then what happens? The government is forced to use its power of the police power to subjugate the subjects who are now uprisen against the corporatocracy's policies, which were instituted by the government. That is exactly where we are. And the rumblings are beginning. You can hear it. You can see it. You can smell it. The question is, what are you doing about it? On a global scale, on a national scale, we should be fighting it with every breath we have. But in addition to that, we should also be preparing ourselves and our families for that which we know to be a greater danger that is more immediate. You can't fight on an empty stomach. You cannot fight if you don't have any resources. You cannot fight if disease has infiltrated your home because you don't have hygienic capabilities of fresh and clean water, the ability to keep yourself clean, the ability to stay warm, the ability to stay fed. So I'm going to encourage you, and we're going to talk about this in our fourth segment, to begin to prepare your own household. I'm going to give you some ideas about how you can do that, including, if you're a local folk, to participate in our cooperative program. Our co-op program allows you to buy bulk food at wholesale rates and put it away for a while. If we're wrong, and if I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, and this all blows over, and the unicorns come to rest, and everybody's happy, and the rainbows come out, and there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, well, guess what? You just bought your food, and you can eat it. No harm done. In fact, at the current rate of inflation, you'll probably save a lot of money. So if I'm wrong, the only thing that will happen is you'll be able to chortle about how wrong I was while eating all that food that you have already purchased and is sitting there waiting for you to essentially prepare. What can go wrong? You've been listening to America's Voice. We're going to take a quick break. Our fourth segment is where we're going to address that. We do have a co-op program. I want you to participate, and I'm going to give you that information now. You can participate with us. What we've done is we've set up with one of our friends who's also a supporter and an advertiser with America's Voice now. This is the Battery Station in West Plains. If you're local, this is what you do. You go to the Battery Station right here in West Plains. They're at 303 Washington Avenue. Their phone number is area code 417-257-7799. That's 417-257-7799. You go there and you ask for the co-op catalog. They'll give you a catalog that allows you to go in there and buy literally any one of thousands and thousands of products. We only deal with those things that are in bulk. So you're talking about a 50-pound bag of rice or a 50-pound bag of flour or wheat or corn or sugar or salt, right? These are the basic staples that are necessary. If you want to buy bulk toilet paper, you can go buy that at any store. But we're talking about foodstuffs for the most part. And when you buy these bags of rice, you're going to save anywhere between 35 and 50% off what you would spend at a retail facility. And you're buying it all in one big bag. It's your job then to break it up and to store it however you choose. Put it away in some sort of a cool and dry place. Some people break it up and store it in smaller bundles and so forth and so on. But the object of this whole exercise is simply this. You will have the basic necessities covered for your family. Food, it's a requirement. You should have the capability to clean and cleanse water for your own use, not for washing, but for drinking. In the event of an emergency, whether that be an electrical grid. I mean, there's articles out all day this week, or all this week, about how sensitive our grid is to attack. So let's assume, for argument's sake, that there was to be some sort of a international attack or a virus instituted into our electrical system that brought the grid down, or a storm, or anything. I mean, it doesn't make any difference what it is. The point is, you should be prepared. And you can participate in our cooperative program where you can order this food in bulk. And when it comes in about a month later, basically you just go down and pick it up. You take it home, you break it up, store it, and you're prepared. Now, we're going to talk more about that in our last segment. But I want you to be aware and cognizant of what's going on around you. There are a couple of great books out there that kind of teach you about it. If you're not into canning, or if you were into canning, you're already probably doing some of this. Find yourself some folks local in your community who you can partner with, who you can work with, who you can cooperate with to make sure that you are preparing for the same civil unrest, the same civil disorder, the same demonstrations, the same riots that DHS is concerned about. If they're concerned about it, follow their lead. If for no other reason, then they must know more than you know. It's that simple, folks. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host. Please find us on the web by going to our website at americasvoicenow.org. You can also, by the way, .org or .com, either way, you'll find it. You can also find our Facebook page by going to facebook.com/America's Voice Now. Please like that page when you get on there, because when we post stories, it posts up on your timeline, then your timeline can share it, and so forth and so on. Helps us get the word out, helps you become credible as a source for information. And at the same point in time, we're helping to educate America. That's what this is about. The last area you can find us is on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/America's Voice Now, where we post up every show that we do just like this in streaming video. You can play it for your friends, your family, send them an email link, whatever you want to do. We'll be back in just a moment. When we come back, we're going to talk about this speech from a California Republican on debt.